Okay, welcome to Digital Tarmac. I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of people coming here because of my title, which I haven't 100% decided yet, but it's going to be controversial, and my thumbnail. But for those of you that do follow the channel, because you've been getting setups for your video games, hopefully you'll like this form of content as well. YouTube have said basically that my videos are too repetitive, so I've got to do something else so that they know I'm not a bot or AI or some shit. Anyway, in all honesty, I started on YouTube in 2016 as a bit of a conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat person. So chatting shit really is what I like doing. It's just I've been shadow banned on YouTube, banned off Facebook multiple times, so I've kind of had to flip and wind my neck in and be careful. But we're talking about a sport, bit of bike racing. Surely I can't end up getting some sort of ban or something for this, can I? I mean, at the end of the day, it's entertainment, people rolling around the track. Anyway, so I want to talk about last weekend's Germany Sachsenring GP and have a few predictions for what I think is likely going to happen at this next GP in Brno at the weekend. And ultimately, when it comes to racing, there's no guarantees, there's only probabilities. What I'm going to say, you know, I've got no real proof to back it up. I'm just looking at the numbers, what I think might happen, and ultimately you've got to bear in mind that there's millions and millions of euros on the line here, and people ain't necessarily going to do the right things or be 100% sportsmanlike when there's a lot of money on the table, and anyone who thinks otherwise is just naive. And ultimately, when it comes to racing cars or motorcycles, it's about the manufacturers proving that they can produce better equipment than their rivals. The riders is just more for the fans. Really, it's about the manufacturers. So this video ain't really going to be talking about Marc Marquez or Ducatis, because, you know, Concessions, they're category A, they got the best bike, doesn't really matter what they do or don't do or didn't do last round or the next round, they are where they are. Yamaha, they're so far down now that, again, it don't matter if they go out on the next round and they win the sprint and win the main race, they're still going to be category D because they just ain't got enough points. What's interesting is what's been happening with Aprilia, KTM and Honda, and what could still happen with KTM and Honda. So I made a few notes. I'll probably have to look at my screen. So for anyone who don't understand the concession system, you've got four groups, A, B, C and D. And I'm now looking at the computer, which has just got it here on the MotoGP site. I'll put it up on the screen when I edit the video. So when we get to the end of round 12, there will have been a total of 447 points on the table for the manufacturers. That is to say that if one of their riders, because it goes by the fastest or the best scoring rider for each manufacturer in each round, scored the maximum in each round, so they won the sprint race and they had a win in the main race, that gave them a total of 37 points over 12 rounds. That's 444 points. And then they work out halfway through the season and at the end of the season, so obviously the current Concessions rankings now are based on where everyone was at the end of 2023. So the end, for the beginning of the year up until Brno, we've obviously had Ducati in Group A, which means, I'll look here at the official site, that means in testing they've got 170 tyres, that's what it says, so I'm guessing that's 170 pairs, not front and, you know, rather than just actual tyres. For private testing, they can only use the test riders, so that means Marquez, Morbidelli, all of them, they cannot test privately. The only times any of the riders can test is on the official circuit testing, which is at 3 circuits. Because they're rank A, they're not allowed to have any wild cards, and they've got 7 or 8 engines for the whole season, and their engine spec is frozen. They chose the 2024 engine, so regardless of what anyone says, all 6 Ducatis, as far as power and everything goes, they will all have the same horsepower, and they're allowed 1 aero update at the moment. I'm guessing that's for the whole season, but it might be they're allowed one. I would say they're allowed an aero update after the summer break, looking at it here. So if you category B, which means you would have 60% to 85% of the points that would have been available at the end of 2023. None of the teams are category B, but they get 190 tyres. Again, test rider only on the private testing. They can only test at the 3 official tests on the circuits. They would be allowed 3 wild cards during the season. Still 7 or 8 engines, engine spec free. They get to obviously field another bike. Category C at the moment has got KTM and Aprilia. So to be category C, that's 35 to 60% of the available points. They get 220 test tyres. So that's quite a few. Again, test rider only in the private testing. This rule I think has changed. I ain't really looked into it too much, but because Martin was injured, obviously he ain't been able to ride the MotoGP bike because he could only ride at rounds or at the official tests. So I think certainly in category C now, they probably can have riders, if they've been injured or something like that, not able to compete for a certain amount of time, they can actually do some of the private testing. But I mean, I'm not 100% sure on the details there. Wild cards, oh actually it tells you here, a start, so they can have 6 wild cards. It says wild cards not subject to engine specification freeze. So if you're category C, even though the engine itself, the spec's frozen, the wild cards are allowed to use a developed engine. So I'm guessing obviously in the future, once we get to the 850s, they won't have an engine freeze going into the following year, so there's a bit of an advantage there. 7 or 8 engines for the season, aero updates 1. And then you get to category D. This is the important one, which at the moment has got the Honda and Yamaha. So to be category D, you can't have scored more, well, 35% or more than the available points at the time when they look at it. So they get 260 tyres, test tyres, and private testing is free. So that means that the actual riders can do extra testing outside of the 3 official test days, and obviously they don't have to do all their testing within the race, and they can test at any circuit that they want as well. They're allowed 6 wild cards. Obviously they haven't got an engine specification freeze, and they can have 9 or 10 engines during the season. And like I say, any engine spec. Looks like they're also allowed 2 aero updates during the season, but they have to discard previous aero specification, whatever the details of that means. So that's the concession system, and where this is important is after Brno, they're going to have the summer break, and then all of the points and everything will be tallied up, and then they'll look at what groups everybody's in. So depending on how well everybody's done through this first half of the season, it's going to dictate where they are on the concessions for the last half of the season. So I will bring up, at the moment, after round 11, so as I said, there's 444 points that have been available, like I said, Ducati, they're locked in Group A no matter what for the rest of the season. So even if they don't score anything at the next round, like literally everyone falls off, there's no points from any Ducati rider, they've already got 88.5% of the points that will have been available. If they win both the sprint and the main race with Marquez, well, they'll be on 96.8%. So they're on category A. Aprilia, they're actually on now 36.3% of the points. So that's category C. And because, what's his name, Fernandez there, Raul, he managed to score 7 points, I think it was, at the last race. That's actually made it now so that even if they score no, well, that is the minimum, they're in it. So even if they score no points at the next round, they're locked into C. It doesn't matter what they do. Because basically the cut-off point is 155 points in the standings after round 12. Well, they're on 161, so they're locked in. KTM at the moment are on 150 points, so if they score nothing in the next round, that puts them on 33.8%, and puts them in category D. So they will, for the rest of the season, be able to have engine upgrades, which their engine is probably the fastest one on the grid in a straight line, but they probably need to do some sort of changes to the specification of it. I don't really know. I'm guessing changing things like the flywheel and stuff like that will all count as engine mods to make it more usable, because they're having problems with rear end grip. So if they manage to get into Group D after the break, there's a good chance that by the end of the season they could be matching or beating the Ducatis, which obviously in 2026 that's going to give them a shot at the title if they've got the right rider. If, however, they go on to score 6 or more points at the next round, that's going to keep them in category C. So my prediction is, and certainly if I was the KTM team boss, all my riders would be getting some sort of memo to say, yeah, under no circumstances is anyone to be making it so we don't end up in category D. Oh, hang on, I've got to get that. Right, so where was I? So yeah, like I was saying, if they score more than 5 points, the top riders, basically that's it. They're not going to be in category D. So that basically means in the sprint race, KTM can't really come any further than 5th. So they get 5 points, but that means then no KTM rider can score any points in the main race. If they don't score points in the sprint, then 11th place is as far as they'll go. And I would imagine, unless suddenly loads of riders start falling off again, which they might, who knows, that's what you're going to see. So that's what we are, KTM. Honda, right, so they're Group D. And if they scored a decent amount of points, that would be enough to move them up to Group C. But as it stands, they could have somebody win the sprint race, and they'd be able to get a 14th then in the main race and still stay in that same category, D. Or if they don't get any sprint points, or say they get 1 sprint point, so that would be a 9th place, they could have somebody come 4th. Again, I almost certainly don't think we're going to see a Honda on the podium in the main race. And yeah, I'd say it's very unlikely that we're going to see a Honda rider get over 14 points anyway, regardless. I think even if they're trying, they're probably not going to do that unless Zarco or someone ends up being particularly good at Brno. And then Yamaha, well, they're so far down the order now, it don't matter if Quartararo goes out and he wins the sprint and he wins the main race, they're still only going to be on 34.9% of the points, which is 155. So they're going to still be able to upgrade their engines for the rest of the season. So that's where we are with the concessions. And what I'm thinking is here, with this last race, we had 18 riders start, 8 riders didn't finish the race, so that's a fair attrition rate. I mean, I think as a percentage that's probably some sort of record in the MotoGP era, which started in 2002. Digi, yeah, that would have been a legit fall. Obviously there's nothing to be gained if you're on a Ducati falling off. They were locked into Group A. Same with Oliveira, there was nothing, they would have been legit. But the other six riders coming off, and like I say, this is only like a bit of a conspiracy theory, I'm just throwing it out there, so, you know, try not to get too upset, but there is some shady stuff going on in all sports, whether you like it or not. It's not all what you just see on the screen. Them other 6 riders, there might have been a little bit more going on there than what we're maybe led to believe. I mean, let's be fair, most riders were coming off at turn 1. Relatively slow corner, fairly decent runoff. If you're just going to flipping have a little crash, that'd look legit, because it is quite a hard corner to get round. You ain't got to make much of a mistake. If you leave your braking slightly late or turning at the wrong time, you're off. So it's going to look legit, and the chances are the rider's not going to get badly hurt and the bike's not probably going to be too badly damaged. So turn 1, if you're going to have a crash, turn 1's ideal, there's no doubt about it. So I made a few little notes here. So Pedro Acosta, right, he's probably leaving KTM at the end of the season, but at the end of the day, I don't know how much other teams want him. He probably don't want to burn any bridges, and he does come off quite regularly, so win it or bin it, that's fairly normal for him. So probably what he was told when he went out there, or would have been like, you know, don't be it's probably what he's been told to do all season, is like, you know, we're not bothered if you flip and crash a few times. If we get down into category D, it's not a bad thing if the bike's not competitive. Go out there, just push it as hard as you can, and if you come off, you come off. And that's probably what he's been doing all year. When you think last season he was on a satellite bike, he was getting podiums, he was doing pretty well. To go from that to his performance this year, and he's still hot proper, he's young, so it's not like having a bad season really is going to harm his career necessarily too much. I don't think he's been trying to stay on that bike as much as what he could have done. And I think it was a case of, if he weren't looking at a podium, he was just going to push and push. He did, and he crashed. That's my take on it. Could be wrong, no proof. Johann Zarco, he's a bit of a journeyman rider. I would say that he's the sort, it don't matter what team he's on, if they tell him to do something, especially now he's in the twilight of his career, he's going to want a decent paycheck. If they say to him, you know, if you ain't looking at winning the race, just flip and throw it down on lap, whatever, I would say he'd do it. I don't think he'd even question it. If that means he's going to keep getting some money and he's going to have a job next year testing or doing whatever he's doing, I'm fairly sure he wouldn't have a problem throwing it down the road if he was asked. And when I look at Honda, looking at the lineup they've got, you've got Chantra. He ain't done jack shit all season, let's be honest. You're looking at it and you're thinking, why on earth did they bother putting him in MotoGP? Well, Honda wanted to have an Asian rider on one of their bikes because Takagami was gone. So that's fair enough. If you're looking at it from his point of view, Chantra's, he's probably getting paid at least as much money as he was in Moto 2. Realistically, he probably weren't never going to win the Moto 2 championship, so it's probably like it's a gamble for him and Honda. He could have gone there, he could have been electric, he could have been a rider that they basically brought on to be a future champion. If not, he's cheap, He's keeping the seat warm for somebody else till next season while they try and sort the bike out. So it's a win-win whatever in it really, and it's another lot of data. So I think that's why they had Chantra. I think with Zarco's been your man. They've said, like, go out there, you know, just for the most part I'd say he's raced normally. He's gone out, he's tried to bring it home and get the best results he could. He's managed to have a win. So he's probably your gauge of how good or bad the Honda is, I would say, in general. And then you got Mir. He's probably been told, like, just go out there, flip and push it as hard as you can. Obviously, if you can get to the front and get a result, get it. But if not, don't be afraid to bin it. They want the data, they want to try and develop that bike, so they needed him to push it as hard as he could. And I think in some interview he said something along them lines. And then you got Luca Marini. He's quite an intelligent rider, very good for giving feedback. They've probably just said, look, don't worry about pushing it too hard. Just ride fairly conservatively for the most part, bring it home, get us the information we need to try and develop this bike. So you've essentially got a 3-tier development phase there, where you got the lunatic who's going to push it as hard as possible, you got somebody who's riding it conservatively, and then you got Zarco, who's your man, who'll sort of give you a true gauge of how good that bike is or isn't. And then I think in this last round, probably it was a case of, right, yeah, we don't want to end up in Group C, just go round a bit, drop the bike somewhere safe and leave it at that. That's what I think happened. I think with Lorenzo Savadori, let's face it, he ain't never going to win piss all, is he? As long as he's got a hole up his arse. He's just a test rider. He's going to do whatever he's told. If they said to him, look, you know, put a bit of a show on, then throw the bike down, it wouldn't even be a question. He'd just do it. Marco Bezzecchi, again, they've probably said to him, look, you know, if you can get the win, take the win, but if it looks like you ain't going to be able to keep up, rather than losing the chance of getting that flipping D category concessions, just put a bit of a show on for a few laps and then flip and throw it down. Don't worry about it, I would say. And not being funny, I don't really trust Bezzecchi. I mean, he'll kiss whose ever arse he needs to get what he wants. Let's be fair, he'll give it all the shit about Marquez. They need to test his bike, it's faster than it should be. That's just there to keep flipping Valentino Rossi happy, because he might end up backing Rossi's team. He knows Rossi gets access to factory equipment, so he's just playing the game, isn't he? He's just keeping his options open. And again, if Aprilia say to him, look, you know, drop the bike down, if we can get that engine development next season, they've probably even said to him, you'll be our main rider next year. He's going to do it, isn't he? Let's face it. So that's what I think's happened there. And then I think Iogura, again, he's another one. He had a good first round, but really he ain't done nothing decent for the rest of the year. If he loses his ride, I'm not sure people are going to be clamouring for him. So again, if Aprilia said, look, you know, just do the right thing, drop it when we need you to, he would have done it. That's what I think. And then Joan Mir, I would say with him, as I said before, I think he was in win it or bin it mode anyway. It's just a case that Iogura basically took him out before he could probably carry on, and if Marini had been doing too well, I would imagine he'd have probably took Marini out. That's what I think. I don't think Marini was in on it all, but like I say, this is just my conspiracy theory. It might be completely wrong, but nobody else is saying it, so I'm going to say it. With the riders that finished that weren't on a Ducati or Yamaha, obviously Marini was the top Honda, or the only Honda. He scored 10 points. So, you know, not ideal, because obviously now they can't do too well in the next round, but at the same time, like I say, they could still get a sprint win, they could still put somebody in fourth in the main race. So nobody's necessarily got to do anything too out the way on the next round to make sure they keep in that D category. So they probably didn't say nothing to him and probably thought, yeah, if he can just go out and score a few points, let him do it. So he just rode his usual conservative self and brought it home and got the 10 points. You got Brad Binder. He's probably leaving KTM anyway. I don't know, the vibe I get from him is he's probably had enough of KTM. He needs some points, doesn't he? So again, he was just going to always ride it and bring it home. Probably would have been better for KTM if he hadn't managed to get as many as 9 points, but there you go. And then Aprilia, Fernandez. I would imagine that in the Aprilia garage, if there was some sort of thing happening where they all decided they were going to flip and lob it down the road, they didn't expect the other teams to all have happen what happened as well. So they probably didn't expect Fernandez to go and bring a 7-point point haul home. So that's basically scuppered it now, and they've probably been keeping Aprilia, Martin on the back burner, purpose for when they've decided they could go full bore. Hence the reason Martin's now suddenly had all this turnaround, and I don't know, this stuff don't look right. So anyway, this is my conspiracy theory. I think there's a load of bullshit in MotoGP going on. I think there probably always has been. I mean, Casey Stoner alluded to it himself. You've only got to have a look at stuff what happened to Lorenzo. You know, who knows. But anyway, my prediction is for the next round, you're not going to see a KTM in higher than 11th place in the main race or 5th place in the sprint. And you're not going to see a Honda, if it wins the sprint, getting more than 2 points in the main race. And if they don't get nothing in the sprint, well, they're not going to be on the podium. That's my prediction. Obviously, when it comes to the front runners, it's going to be Ducati in it. But the good news is, at least at the next round, Yamaha and Aprilia are both locked in or whatever concessions categories they're in now. So them riders are all going to be going full bore as well. So, you know, that's going to make it a bit more interesting. I think Bezzecchi's on good form. I could see him knocking on the door of the podium again, personally. Don't know about Martin. I like Martin. I think he's a little bit of an overrated rider. I think he just had everything, the stars and everything all just aligned for him last year. But I don't think he's quite the flipping championship contender that people make him out to be. But I could be wrong. Anyway, that's my view on it. If you like my sort of MotoGP conspiracy content, give us a thumbs up. Let us know your opinions in the comments. It's one of them. It's the first time I've done it. If people like it, believe me, there's plenty more shit that I could chat about past races and championships, because I've been watching this stuff for over 20 years and I still re-watch the old races. You know, I listen to what the riders say, like Mick Doohan about the Big Bang engines and the screamers and all that stuff. There's loads of myths going about that if you've got the time to go through the internet and read enough and listen to enough what the riders say, they can all be dispelled. Not to mention I've got flipping stacks of racer magazines and all that. So yeah, if you like it, give it a thumbs up. If I don't really get too much reaction to it and people aren't that keen on it, well, I'll probably just go back to doing video game setups if that's what people want. But in all honesty, I really like watching the racing, and I'm probably more into doing content like this rather than just pissing around on a computer game. So yeah, let me know. Thank you very much. Hopefully you'll see me on another one.